Las Vegas, October 1969. Before the city was anything else, it was light. Artificial light. Light that didn't ask for permission. Light that lied about the time. At 11 p.m., the Nevada sky looked like noon, and the neon lights of the Strip blinked with the urgency of something that needs to be believed. But this didn't happen on the Strip. It happened 3 blocks east in a showroom rented by the week, with a pine plank floor, 2 rows of borrowed floodlights, and the smell of sawdust mixed with old sweat. The kind of place where shows go when they aren't big enough for a theater, nor small enough for a bar. The kind of place where people pay cash and don't ask where to park. That night there were 230 people inside, and all of them had paid to watch someone fail. The sign at the entrance was a hand-printed banner, red on white, with 30 centimeters letters. Victor Brand, the Colossus of Munich, $100,000. Last 60 seconds. Below, in smaller but no less serious lettering, no man has achieved it yet. The number was not an empty promise. Victor Brand stood 1.93 m tall and weighed 222 kilograms. Not 222 kilograms of carnival fat. 222 kilograms of what happens when a man spends 20 years lifting stones in Bavaria, then iron in Munich, then national competitors in European wrestling, and then, when trophies stopped meaning anything, crossed the Atlantic looking for something that could still surprise him. He hadn't found it. 12 years of touring, 473 documented challengers, 0 payouts. The ritual was always the same. Victor would step onto the wooden platform and take off his shirt with the unhurried calm of someone doing the same thing he has done 1,000 times. He stood in the center of the ring bounded by 4 wooden posts and a manila rope. He waited, and when the challenger entered, Victor did not move toward him. He let him come. That was the first thing challengers misunderstood. They thought immobility was confidence. It was something more precise than that. It was the certainty of someone who knows the world has no surprises left for him. Not for a long time. Victor Brand was not cruel. That is an important detail. He didn't humiliate, he didn't brag. Afterward, when a man fell, and they all fell, usually before second X, Victor extended his hand to help him up every single time, without exception. It was his only public gesture of something that could be called tenderness. But before extending that hand, he always looked for a second. 2. He looked at the man on the ground with something in his eyes that was not satisfaction. It was closer to the disappointment of someone who keeps opening doors hoping to find something on the other side. That night, on the Pine platform in Las Vegas, Victor had already dispatched 3 challengers. The first was a former light heavyweight boxer with 17 professional fights. He lasted 11 seconds. The second was an Army Ranger who weighed 104 kilograms and spoke with the confidence of someone who has survived real things. He lasted 16. The third was a man with no known history who simply stood up from his chair in the audience, walked onto the platform, and said he was confident. That was exactly what Victor expected to hear. He lasted 7 seconds. The master of ceremonies, a thin man in a silver sequin jacket named Eddie Ruiz, who had been doing this with Victor for 3 years, walked to the center of the platform with his long-corded microphone and looked out at the room. 230 people. Silence of the specific variety that occurs when people don't know whether they should laugh or not. Eddie raised the microphone. Is there anyone else tonight? Anyone in this room who wants to try? $100,000, 60 seconds. Mr. Brand is waiting. Victor stood in the center of the platform with his arms crossed over his chest. He was not looking at the room. He was staring at a fixed point on the back wall, like someone waiting for the bus. In the 3rd row from the back, next to the left aisle, sat a man who had been there since before the doors opened. Nobody had particularly noticed him. He was 1.73 m tall and weighed 63 kilograms. He wore a white long-sleeved shirt rolled up to his elbows and black trousers, and his arms were crossed over his lap with the specific stillness of someone who isn't waiting for anything because he already knows exactly what is going to happen. He had arrived early. He had watched the 3 fights attentively, but not with the audience's attention. That survival focus that sharpens when people sense danger on stage. It was a different kind of attention. Technical, the kind of look an architect gives when walking into a building, knowing within the first 10 minutes where the structural problems are. While the Army Ranger lasted 16 seconds, this man tilted his head slightly. While the man with no known history lasted 7, a corner of his mouth barely twitched. When Eddie Ruiz asked again if anyone wanted to try, the man in the white shirt uncrossed his arms, stood up slowly, and raised a hand. The room turned. 230 people looked at that man, and the reaction was instantaneous and unanimous. A suppressed laugh that didn't quite turn into a full laugh because basic manners stopped most of them. A murmur. Someone in row 7 said something in a low voice that his neighbor celebrated with a short chuckle. Victor Brand, for the first time that night, turned his head and looked at the man in the white shirt. He looked at him exactly as one would look at the proposal. Eddie Ruiz walked to the edge of the platform with a smile, trying to hide the same discomfort felt by the entire room. "Sir, are you sure?" The man in the white shirt was already walking toward the platform. He didn't answer the question. It wasn't necessary. Now, before this man steps up those 3 wooden steps, there is something you need to know. You have been watching this channel for months because you know that Bruce Lee's stories are not just entertainment. They are another way of understanding the world. And if that resonates with you, I want to tell you something. A few months ago, we gathered the 5 rules that Bruce Lee never published in any book, but which were scattered throughout his private notes, personal letters, and testimonials from his closest students. We compiled it into a free ebook, The 5 Secret Rules of Bruce Lee, and made it available exclusively for subscribers of this channel as a token of gratitude for the support you've given since the beginning. If you want to download it, the link is in the description. You only need your name and email, and within minutes you'll have it in your inbox at no cost, just for those who are here. The link is below. Now back to Las Vegas. The man in the white shirt climbed the 3 steps. The pine platform creaked under his feet. A small, almost ridiculous sound after the noises it had made under the feet of the 3 men who had preceded him that night. He stood in the center of the ring, bounded by the manila ropes. Victor Brand looked at him from the opposite side. In the time it had taken the man in the white shirt to step up, Victor hadn't changed position. He remained standing, arms crossed, with the same expression of someone calculating how much time is left until the end of the day. That expression was the first mistake Victor was making, but he didn't know it yet. Eddie Ruiz stepped between the 2 men, looked at the room with the rhythm of a man who has learned to make a show out of every second, and raised the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, the rules are simple. Mr. Brand cannot use weapons. The challenger cannot leave the ring. If the challenger is still standing when the bell rings at the 60th second, the house pays $100,000 in cash. If the challenger leaves the ring or falls, the contest is over." A pause. "The name of our challenger." The man in the white shirt said it softly. Just his name. 2 words. Eddie repeated them into the microphone. In the room, the silence that followed was not the silence of recognition. Most of the 230 people present that night didn't know who that name belonged to. They were in Las Vegas in 1969, in a third-rate showroom, paying to see a European giant throw people to the floor. They were not the kind of audience that followed the martial arts world, but in the 5th row, a man with thick-framed glasses sat up slightly in his chair. And in the 7th, 2 men who had come together looked at each other, and in the front row, a woman holding a notebook took out her pencil. Victor Brand didn't react to the name either. That was also a mistake. Victor had built his career on a simple, powerful premise. That size matters more than any other variable. He had defeated boxers, wrestlers, and martial artists from 12 different disciplines. He had defeated faster, more technical, more experienced men because in the end, when Victor grabbed hold of someone, physics took control. And physics doesn't negotiate. 222 kilograms over 63 kilograms is not a fight. It's an equation. This was the certainty with which Victor Brand had slept for 12 years. Tonight, that certainty had 59 seconds to live. Eddie Ruiz looked at the watch on his left wrist, raised his hand, and lowered it. Victor moved. What happened in the first 4 seconds confused most of the room because they were expecting something different. They expected Victor to charge forward. The momentum of 222 kilograms turned into a runaway train. It was what he had done with the 3 previous challengers, and it was what logic suggested. Victor didn't charge. Victor moved laterally, fast for his size, with more technical grace than anyone in that room gave him credit for. Victor circled the inner perimeter of the ring looking for the angle. Not because he needed it, but because it was his method, analyze before closing in. He had learned that in his early years, when a judo fighter in Hamburg taught him that size without direction was wasted energy. The man in the white shirt pivoted with him. He didn't run, he didn't step back. He rotated on his own axis, always facing Victor, feet separated at exactly shoulder width and knees slightly bent. His arms were low, relaxed, hands open. Victor noticed it. Not the detail of the relaxed arms. He had seen that before in people trying to look calm. He noticed something else. He noticed that the man in the white shirt wasn't looking at his hands, wasn't looking at his shoulders, wasn't looking at the direction of his movement. He was looking at the center of his chest. Victor had been looked at in many ways over 12 years. He had been looked at with fear, defiance, calculation, and desperation. This look was different. It was the look of someone reading something. Victor charged. The first point of contact was a grab attempt. Victor's arms opened like two hydraulic press clamps, seeking to wrap the man in the white shirt in a bear hug that no one had ever escaped. It was his classic opening move, and it had worked 473 times. The man in the white shirt wasn't there. Not completely. He had moved laterally 15 centimeters to the left with a timing that the room struggled to process because the movement was smaller than instinct expected. He didn't jump, he didn't dodge backward. He gave just enough ground for Victor's arms to close on empty air. And the moment they closed, the open hand of the man in the white shirt touched the side of Victor's forearm with light pressure. Not a strike, a redirection, and the momentum of the 222 kilograms continued its natural trajectory without a target. Victor recovered his balance in 2 steps, turned, and for the first time in 12 years, there was a question on his face. The room didn't quite understand what it had seen either. They had seen the giant move and miss. They had seen the smaller man move less than expected. There was something about it that didn't fit their model of what this matchup should look like, and the dissonance kept them silent. Victor attacked again, this time with less flair and more speed, adjusting the arc of his hold, closing the escape angle. He was smart. Victor wasn't just strength. He was someone who learned in real time. This time, the man in the white shirt couldn't completely avoid contact. Victor's right arm caught his left shoulder, and although it wasn't the full hold Victor wanted, it was enough for physics to join the conversation. Victor rotated toward his own center, using his mass as leverage, and the man in the white shirt was dragged in a downward arc. His left knee touched the platform. The sound was dry, clear, unequivocal against the pine floor. The room exhaled. 230 people exhaled at the same time, and the sound was like a wave breaking on the shore. And in that sound, there was more than surprise, there was relief. The relief of seeing that the world still worked the way they understood, that physics was physics, that 222 kilograms was 222 kilograms. Victor stood over him, arms open as always. The finishing posture he had repeated 473 times. All that was left was to close the trap. In the front row, the woman with the notebook had stopped writing. In the fifth, the man in the thick-framed glasses had his hand over his mouth, and the man in the white shirt was kneeling on the pine floor with his head slightly bowed, breathing. Not breathing like someone trying to recover, but breathing like someone doing something else. A slow, deliberate breath coming from the diaphragm, not the chest. And as he breathed, his eyes were not on the floor. His eyes were on Victor Brand's right shoulder. 29 seconds had passed, 31 remained. And in those 31 seconds, something Victor couldn't see was unfolding with the same certainty as the sunrise. The man in the white shirt had been searching for a pattern since the very first second. Not the footwork pattern, which was visible but irrelevant at his scale, nor the arm reach pattern, which he also had mapped out. He was looking for something smaller. The kind of detail that only appears when an opponent has repeated the same movement thousands of times and is no longer aware that he is telegraphing it. Victor Brand, on every charge, turned his right shoulder exactly 1 second before moving. It wasn't a large movement. It was a micro-turn of no more than 4 or 5 degrees. The kind of involuntary setup the body develops when a movement becomes so familiar it ceases to be a conscious decision and becomes a reflex. Victor didn't even know he did it. He had probably been doing it for 12 years, and no one had read it yet because no one had possessed the time, the composure, and the right angle to see it. The man in the white shirt had all three because he had been on the floor before he needed them. Now he stood up slowly, with an economy of movement that was itself a statement. He didn't jump, he didn't seek distance. He stood up in the center of the space between himself and Victor, feet exactly where they had been before, and crossed his arms again, not in a defensive posture, but relaxed at his sides. Victor closed in. The charge was total. This time, Victor had decided to end it on the next move. A complete grab, both arms, low center of gravity, full mass in motion. 474 confirmations of the same truth. Victor's right shoulder turned 4 degrees. The man in the white shirt was no longer looking at his chest. He was looking at that shoulder. And at the exact moment the shoulder telegraphed the direction, the man in the white shirt moved. Not laterally this time, but inward, along the line of attack, under the reach of Victor's arms, with a speed that most of the room processed like a jump cut in a movie, because the human brain wasn't designed to register that level of acceleration as continuous movement. He entered the inner space, the space where Victor's arms couldn't reach, and from there, with his center of gravity perfectly aligned over his lead foot, executed the technique he had been waiting to use since second one. It wasn't a strike. It was something more precise than a strike. It was a hip leverage maneuver. His left forearm beneath Victor's right elbow, his right forearm over Victor's left wrist, his body weight rotating backward on the exact axis that converted Victor's mass from strength into vulnerability. The very same physics Victor had used his entire career to bring down others, now applied from the inside, from the angle that didn't exist on his map of possibilities. Victor Brand, for the first time in 12 years, lost his balance. He didn't fall. That was also important. The man in the white shirt didn't let him fall. He controlled the loss of balance with the same hands that had caused it, stopping the descent at the exact point where Victor was completely neutralized yet standing, or almost standing, with knees bent, body tilted forward, center of gravity displaced, and no recovery angle left. And then, in that position, the man in the white shirt extended the open palm of his right hand. Not fast, but slowly, with a deliberation that was impossible to misinterpret. The open palm stopped 2 centimeters from Victor Brand's throat. It didn't touch. The room took time to process what it was seeing. For seconds of total silence. The kind of silence that isn't the absence of sound, but the presence of something people don't yet have words to describe. 230 people staring at an open palm 2 centimeters from a throat, trying to calculate what that meant. It meant here. Here ends your certainty. This is where 12 years of physical equations met their first variable that wasn't in the book. The bell for the 60th second rang at some point after. No one in the room would remember exactly when, because by that time, the clock had ceased to be relevant. What Victor would remember decades later, when he told this story to people who had reasons to listen, was not the technique, nor the speed, nor the leverage, nor the entry angle. It was the eyes of the man in the white shirt the moment the palm stopped 2 centimeters from his throat. There was no triumph, no display. There was something Victor always described with the exact same word, no matter how many times he told the story: clarity. As if what those eyes were saying was, this was never about you. It was never about you. It took Victor 3 seconds to regain his balance. He stood up slowly. The man in the white shirt had already lowered his hand. They stood facing each other at the same distance as in the beginning. The room began to applaud, slowly at first, then all together, then standing up. Because the human brain, when it finally realizes it has just witnessed something it didn't understand while watching it, needs to express it through the body. Eddie Ruiz walked to the center of the platform with the microphone and opened his mouth to say something. Victor raised a hand. Eddie stopped. Victor Brand looked at the man in the white shirt for 4 seconds. Then he said in English, with a Bavarian accent, "I've been waiting 12 years for this." The man in the white shirt didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was calm. Not the tone of someone who has just won something, but the tone of someone finishing a conversation that began before either of them stepped onto the platform. "I didn't find your weakness," he said. "I found what was always there. You can see it too." Victor looked at him, and what happened on his face was not the processing of a defeat. It was something more complex. The processing of a question that had gone unasked for 12 years and had just received its first valid answer. He extended his hand. The man in the white shirt took it. A handshake, 3 seconds, and then both stepped down from the platform. Something happened in this story that deserves a moment's pause, because what you've just heard isn't simply about a fight won. It's about what happens when someone stops fighting against another person's strength and begins to understand its architecture. There is a huge difference between the two. And if that resonates, if something in this story touched the way you think about facing obstacles that seem bigger than you, then you need to know that what made Bruce Lee different wasn't his speed or his strength. It was the system behind it all. His philosophy, his training method, his diet, his mental discipline. All of that is documented in the Bruce Lee Code, the book we wrote gathering decades of notes, interviews, and texts that never widely circulated. It is available on Amazon and Hotmart. The links are in the video description, And for subscribers of this channel who have been here from the start and deserve something extra, there's a coupon on Hotmart for 20% off. The coupon code is Legato20, just for you guys, because it's not a discount for just anyone. It's for those who already understand what this is about. Now let's go back. That night, after the hall slowly emptied. People always leave more slowly when they've seen something unexpected. A man approached the edge of the platform where the man in the white shirt was adjusting his sleeves. It was the man in the thick-framed glasses from row 5, a sports journalist from Denver who had come to Las Vegas to cover something else and ended up in this hall out of curiosity and a footnote in the hotel show program where he was staying. He asked him when he knew he could do it. The man in the white shirt finished adjusting his left sleeve. The answer took a moment. "When I was on the floor," he said. The journalist waited for him to continue. "When I was on the floor was the first time I could see everything. Before that, there was too much noise. I needed the noise to stop to hear what mattered." The journalist wrote that down in his notebook. He published it 4 days later in the sports section of the Denver Post in a 300-word article that most of his readers skimmed through. But the article existed, and decades later, when someone searches through microfilm archives, the story of that Las Vegas showroom finds them. And we understand something that the room didn't know that night. The man in the white shirt didn't stay to pick up the $100,000. Eddie Ruiz offered it to him with all the protocol of someone fulfilling a contractual promise he hoped he'd never have to honor. The man in the white shirt listened to him until the end. "No, thank you," he said. Eddie looked at him as if he had spoken in a language that didn't exist. "I didn't step up for the money," he explained, and taking the money would change what it was. That was also written down by the Denver journalist, and it was also written by Victor Brand 10 years later in a letter to a student who had asked him what the most important moment of his career had been. Victor replied that it was no victory. It was the first time someone proved they could beat him and took nothing, because taking something would have meant doing it for someone else. And he did it for himself. "That's the difference," Victor wrote, "and it took me 10 years to fully understand it." The letter exists, or something very similar to it exists in the memoirs of those who knew Victor Brand in the years that followed, when the Colossus of Munich left the showrooms behind and opened a gym in Houston, where he trained fighters for 17 years. There was, according to those who frequented it, a framed photograph on his office wall. It wasn't a photo of any of his victories. It was the photo of a red-on-white sign, the letters reading, "Victor Brand, the Colossus of Munich, $100,000, last 60 seconds, and below it, written by hand in black marker in the handwriting of someone not thinking about presentation, but record-keeping. The time I learned that strength has a direction. You just have to find it. Las Vegas turned off its lights at dawn. Or more precisely, at dawn the lights stopped being the brightest things on the landscape, and the sun claimed that title without asking. It was the only hour of the day when the city seemed to know there was something bigger than itself. 3 blocks east of the Strip, in a showroom with a pine floor and the smell of sawdust, a 63 kilograms man walked toward the exit down the center aisle, between empty chairs that still held the warmth of 230 people. Nobody saw him leave. Or more precisely, nobody who saw him leave yet fully understood what they had seen. That too would take time. All things that matter take time. If this story changed anything about how you think about strength, not physical strength, but the other kind, the kind not measured in kilos, leave a like and tell me in the comments what impacted you most. The moment his knee hit the floor, or the moment his palm stopped 2 centimeters away. Only those who watched the full video know which is which. And remember, the free ebook, The 5 Secret Rules of Bruce Lee, is in the description. Just your name and email, exclusive to subscribers of this channel, because we built this space together.